Hello everyone and welcome to MJC School Light Talk. Today our speaker is Artyom and he will continue to walk through the Kafka, and today we will going to focus on configuration. As usual, you can leave your questions in the chat and we will try to answer all of them. So Artyom, you can start.
All right, let me introduce myself. My name is Artyom Nikitenko. I am a senior Java software engineer. I have more than 6 years of experience in IT industry. My primary skill is Java, but my skill set has variety of technologies. In this presentation, I will show you one problem you might face when you are working with Apache Kafka consumers and what may happen when consumer reads data slowly. I will show you code samples with help of Spring Framework, so you need to have fundamental knowledge of this framework to understand the code. The knowledge of different message brokers is not mandatory, but may come in handy. Um, Let me start by reminding you what a consumer group is. Essentially, a consumer group allows us to apply automatic partition assignment for group members. One additional thing is that consumer group allows us to control offset for several deployed applications, which is especially useful in a cluster environment where you need to scale up applications to achieve fault tolerance. Um, Here is how you can read records using Spring Framework. There is an annotation Kafka listener, and depending on listener type, the method signature will slightly change. With the single listener type, you get only one record at a time, and with batch listener, you get a collection. But don't get confused with listener types. Spring Framework brings us these two interaction styles. However, there's always a batch processing involved under the hood to reduce network traffic. And here comes a question. How many records do we receive? By default, you get up to 500 records. And similarly to HTTP protocol, we do not want to wait forever, and Kafka consumer has timeout for reading records. And by default, it is set to 5 minutes. And you might think that 5 minutes is long enough to process 500 records. But what if to process a record, you need to make some requests to some services, and they may respond slowly, they may fail, and you might apply some retry mechanism. And all of this combined might lead to exceeding timeout. Uh, just imagine, what if to process a record you need at least 1 second? 500 seconds is more than 8 minutes. So you have already exceeded timeout. Yeah, there's so much configuration properties in Kafka, and it is hard to remember them all. And here you can see what happens when consumer fails to meet timeout. It will leave the group to trigger a balance. And this event happens asynchronously. However, processing records occurs on different thread, and this thread will not be interrupted by this event until a little bit later. We finished processing the batch, and we try to commit offset, and we get an exception. commit failed exception, just because we are no longer the part of consumer group, and therefore we cannot commit offset. And one thing about Spring Kafka module is that it has a handler, and that handler has embedded retry mechanism. And after we get an exception, Spring will try to handle it for us and make a retry. And uh, after we process data one more time, we do our second commit offset attempt, and we get a commit failed exception one more time. And in this setup, you can see only one consumer running, and that is how you develop your applications locally. However, in a cluster environment, it becomes even worse. After a consumer rebalance, different consumer will be assigned to read data from this partition, and we will end up with two consumers read the same data simultaneously. Uh, Terrible situation. And now let me show it all in action. So I have prepared a demo topic, and I populated it with some records. As you can see, current read position is at the very beginning, current offset is 0. And let me enter presentation mode. We are not really interested in message production here, but let me just quickly show how did I feed this topic. I just sent JSON data with message hello world and current timestamp. Like I said, we don't really care about data we receive. So to simulate commit failed exception, I slightly changed some default settings. I fetch only 40 records, and timeout is set to 30 seconds. Um, and to simulate the processing delay, I added simple thread sleep with 1 second. Now I'm going to start consumer, and let's see what happens. So I need 40 seconds to process the whole batch. And after 30 seconds, we should leave the group. So we received our 40 records. We are reading them. Everything is going fine. Nothing bad has happened so far. Let's just wait. We are getting close. And all right, after 30 seconds, we got this warning. Consumer poll timeout has expired. But the processing is still going. And when it finished, we started to read the data one more time. Let me check the count offset. As you can see, it has not changed. We are still at the beginning. And now to make it even more close to production, I will start one more consumer application to make it a cluster. And I have only one partition in topic, and therefore we can have only one active consumer at a time. So this node is in idle state because this one is assigned to read partition. But when timeout will happen on this node, the second node should pick up reading from this partition. Yes, that happened. And now look at this. Even though we are no longer the part of the group, but we are still reading data. And now on both nodes, even though they are the part of the same consumer group. And that is because this retries from a Spring framework. Let me stop all this. And let's check current offset. As you can see, we are still in the beginning, and despite the number of attempts we made to process these records. So how to fix this? First of all, you need to override default error handler, and here is how you can do that. Um, all you need to do is just declare a bin in your Spring configuration, and you might adjust the behavior, how you would like to handle errors. For example, you might publish them in DLT, um, and you might adjust the number of attempts and the kind of exceptions you want to retry and those that you would like to skip. And obviously, we do not want to make any retries for a commit failed exception. So let's try this out. Let me show you a configuration. So to enable this bin, I added a flag in my configuration, and I need to set it to true. Let me do this. Here is the property. All right. Now let's try one more time. It will take some time to spin up the server. All right, this node has started and has been assigned to read partition. This one is in idle state. Now let's wait for 30 seconds. Almost there. All right, we got timeout here, and this node has been assigned to read data. And now we can see that we published records to DLT, and now we do not do anything. We do not read the same data in parallel. But the problem has not solved yet. As you can see, we are still cannot commit offset. So at least partially problem solved. We do not read data simultaneously. That is something. To handle offset properly, you need to be aware how you can commit offset. And you can do this in two ways. You can use after commit, and you can commit offset manually by invoking an acknowledgement method. And Spring Framework brings us an acknowledgement mode, and you can delegate this invocation of this acknowledge method to Spring, and depending on acknowledgement mode, Spring will do this in different ways. By default, you get batch acknowledgement mode, and you just saw it in action. Um, it has a counter to track the number of records you processed, and this counter will be uh, tested against special configuration property. And with batch mode, it is out of your control and it is always set to 1. So with default settings, Spring will make comparison like this. 500 records is more or equal to 1. Well, obviously, this gives us true, and that means that it is time to commit offset. Record mode. As the name suggests, we commit offset after processing each record. And there is a timeout. We do not use a counter here. We check time interval. We just set time stamp after we fetch records from partition, and when we processed a batch, we just compare how much time has passed. Count mode, very similar to batch, but here we actually can control this configuration property to uh, uh, and we can modify how many records we would like to track. And count time mode, that is actually a combination of both count and time. Manual mode, here we will be provided with acknowledgement object, and we are responsible for invocation of acknowledge method. And there is a manual immediate mode, and this one is actually the most powerful one. Sounds promising, right? All right. Let me show you record mode in action. I need to choose single listener type, and let's start. It will take some time because starting is a very painful thing. All right, we are got records and we are processing them, and let's check the count offset. As you can see, after processing each record, we are committing offset. Seems like everything is going to be fine, and we are protected with this acknowledgement mode, but not that fast. We can still get commit failed exception even here, but with this acknowledgement mode, it is not that uh, terrifying. At least one record will be consumed twice, but in comparison with batch acknowledgement mode, that is a decent result. Let's check the kind of set. As you can see, they do not stack in the beginning. And now let me show you manual immediate mode. And I will choose batch listener type. Let's start. So the most powerful mode sounds intriguing. Maybe this one is what we are looking for. All right, we got our records. We are reading them, and let's check offset. As you can see, we do not commit offset. And that is because the check to whether commit offset or not will be evaluated at the very end after processing the whole batch, and therefore we get this annoying warning: consumable timeout has expired. And let's check the count of set. Still the same. And now you might ask, Thomas, I thought you said this is the most powerful mode. Well, it is. I will reveal its secret a little bit later. So, to summarize, all acknowledgement modes are vulnerable to commit failed exception. Some of them more, some of them less, but none of them can protect you on 100%, sadly. Uh, how about after commit? Um, it is based on time interval. We just compare how much time has passed, and the check will be uh, evaluated at certain events, like before partition assignment, or um, when we fetch records from a partition, or when we stop consumer application. Now let's try out. Maybe after commit is uh, uh, can be our security guard against commit failed exception. All right. Application is starting. Cold startup will uh, take some time. All right, we got our 40 records, and uh, I do not expect a set commit request to happen here just because we just started application and there is no event to dispatch this offset commit request. Let's just wait for timeout. It happened. Now let's wait for completion. Okay. Here you can see that we tried to commit offset, and obviously it wasn't successful. Let's make sure. Yeah, unfortunately, we are still in the same position. So after commit cannot bring the salvation from commit failed exception. Let me disable it. How about retries? Well, you saw what they can do with common error handler. They might do more harm than repair. But Spring Framework has one additional mechanism to handle errors. There is an annotation, a triable topic, and it is based on idea of DLT, a special queue where you put your records when you have failed to process them. And if you try to include this commit failed exception in the list of retriable exceptions, it is not going to work. Just because if you are not the part of the group, you cannot commit offset, and any attempt will lead to the same outcome. Let's make sure that retries are useless against commit file exception. I need to choose single listener type because um, the triable topic is compatible only with this type. and acknowledgement mode will be batch. All right, we connected to Kafka. We are reading records. Now, let's just wait for uh, a timeout. Please be patient. I could have make timeout even less, but in that case we would stuck in a constantly balance. All right, timeout has happened, and now let's check count of set. Well, we are still in the same position, and you can see that a few additional topics have been created. Two for retries and one for DLT. And there are no records in these topics, and still nothing. All right, now let me try something different. I will choose uh, acknowledgement mode record, and let's see how it behaves with this combination. Okay, we are reading records, and to make our life easier, I will search for in logs for presence of this annoying warning: consumer poll timeout has expired. Should be happened anytime soon. All right, we have hit timeout. Now let's check the offset. So, as you can see, we were able to publish a record for each try, but with this combination um, with record acknowledgement mode, that is not very effective. Just because this failed record will still be consumed twice due to consumer rebalance and publish it to one additional topic does not make much sense. Yeah. Um, Going back to manual immediate mode, the secret is to put invocation of acknowledge method to the right place. Just think, if you put invocation of this method at the end of your Kafka listener, what the difference does that make? That would be the same if you had a regular batch acknowledgement mode. That would work the same. But if you put this line before processing records, that would be a game changer. Or you might have some minor operations like mm, login of incoming records, but all heavy stuff goes only after you confirmed that, uh, that you have consumed records. Now let's try this approach. Going back to manual immediate mode, and let me show you code to enable this behavior. I have added if statement in the code, and I cover it with a flag, so I need to set it in true in my configuration. So let me do that. Here's property. I will set it to true, and let's start. Yeah, cold start, always painful. Okay, we got our records. Ah, excuse me. I think I forgot. Ah, let me use batch mode because in combination of manual immediate and single listener type, that would be that would work like if we had a record acknowledgement mode, and you already know that uh, it is um, not much affected by uh, commit fault exception. Mm, I think I have something wrong with my configurations this time. Let me figure out quickly. All right. Um, listener type batch acknowledgement mode. Um, of course. Uh, since retriable type is still enabled and listener type is batch, it shows an error. Yeah, retriable type is not compatible with batch listener type. All right, we got our records, and now let's check the offset. Okay, we are able to commit these records, and we are still processing them. And let's search for logs for presence of this warning. And unfortunately, we can still hit timeout, but in this case, it is not a big deal anymore, just because after consumer rebalance, new node will fetch the latest offset, and this data will not be consumed twice. Here you can see that after we have uh, rejoined to group, we are reading a new batch of data. Check the offset. You can see that we are going forward. We are not stuck. That is a good sign. So problem has finally solved at once. Um, uh, all right. There's one more approach you might to take to resolve this problem. You can use asynchronous reading. You can read data in parallel. And I don't know how many of you use parallel stream. I don't, but I found out that it may come in handy in this use case. Or you can use completable future or any other asynchronous approach you like. Uh, let's try it out. I will choose acknowledgement mode batch. And same as before, I have added a flag and I need to set it in true to execute this code. Let me do this. So first of all, I will disable this and enable asynchronous reading. I will use a combination with parallel stream. Fingers crossed. And look at this. We got our records and we are reading them in parallel. And let's search for any warnings. Nothing. And let's check the count of set. Look at this. We were able to process a lot of data, uh, and we are getting close to the end of this partition. And this lag uh, is decreasing. No warnings, um, no errors this time. That is incredible. So parallel processing for the rescue. That is for sure. But that is not a silver bullet, and you can still get some problems. All right, to summarize, as you have seen, this problem might be quite serious, and the best way to uh, address this issue is to adjust the number of records you fetch from a partition, um, and time you need to read them. And if you have debug login level for Kafka SDK, and you read logs carefully, that is something that they suggest you to do. Add partitions and consumers. That does not necessarily save you from slow reading, but at least the whole your cluster will be engaged in processing records. Use retries, but use them wisely. Otherwise, they will work against you. Remember about the existence of common error handler, and I highly recommend you to override default behavior uh, just to avoid unexpected retries. And obviously, you want to disable retries for commit failed exception. It is pointless to try to recover from that. Uh, any attempt will lead to the same result. You know, uh, uh, Titanic cannot break the iceberg. Iceberg is always stronger. Um, you have several acknowledgement modes and choose the one that fits you most. And remember about cap theorem. In a distributed world, you can achieve only two out of three things: um, consistency, availability, or partition fault tolerance. You cannot get them all at once. You need to sacrifice something. So that concludes my presentation. Any questions?
Yes, we have a couple of questions. Yeah, I try to answer some of them during the meeting. So we will have the recording and after the meeting. And as for link to our resources, yeah, we have a link to our GitHub and at our site mgc.school. So yeah, I think after our stream, you can find the materials in our GitHub. Um, yeah, some questions came in our VR community. One of them, let me post it here. What is the name of the property in ACK models? The one that batch sets to 500.
Um, okay, let me show you this one more time. Max Pol records. That is property that defines how many data you fetch from a partition. And max pole interval milliseconds is a property for uh, for reading these records. Actually, that is not for reading. It defines how long it takes to rebalance has to happen. So, if your consumer will not confirm the records that it has consumed these records, it should take in consideration this max pole interval milliseconds, and if time has passed, uh, it is a signal to leave the group to trigger a balance.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, what Kafka resources do you recommend for a newbie? Practical ones preferred. Maybe you can suggest some.
Um, all right. There's a company. It is named Confluent, and they distribute their uh, own build of Apache Kafka, and they have uh, some educational materials on their site, and that is one additional resource apart from official Apache website.
Um, yeah, I agree. It really depends on how you prefer to get the information. Maybe you prefer to watch some YouTube videos. Maybe you prefer some books. So it really depends on what you need. I can suggest the book Kafka in Action. I know that a lot of engineers used it to learn about Kafka. Um, yeah, I hope that answers the question. Um, I think the final one, if you have some questions, you can post. But the for now we have one more. Why do you like Kafka? If you like it,
Uh, well, mm, I just worked with this message broker, and um, I saw some statistics that tells me that it is a leading message broker on the market. So that is one of reasons that I invest my time in learning of this particular message broker. And mm, since I had this message broker on a couple of my uh, previous projects, so I had to learn it.
yeah, I have like the same experience. I have it in projects, so that's why uh, I learned it. Yeah, uh, so something similar. Uh, I don't see any more questions in the chat, so I think we can end our today's stream. Thank you everyone who participated, who joined us today, and thank you Artyom for your presentation, for your demo, and for your sharing your knowledge about Kafka.
Thank you too. Bye.
Bye.